Carl Jung said, "Awaken and shine your light for others to follow. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This is an invitation to move differently in the world, to operate from a place of deep knowing and alignment. I'm Adrienne McDonald, and welcome to the Source Code Podcast. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time. Grab your favorite beverage, and let's see what the muse has for us today. I was listening to a podcast with Rick Rubin and Robert Downey Jr., and like most of Rick's podcast episodes, it's really like sitting in and listening to two friends talk. And Robert Downey Jr. is such an incredibly talented human, and he's had some really serious challenges play out in the public eye, which he openly discussed a bit with Rick. There were two things that really struck me. One thing he said was, fear will motivate us for a while. Sometimes fear is a great first stepping stone, but you can't stay there because, boy, it is crazy how short-lived the memory of an inherent mortal threat is. And I thought, we tend to say that we will change or promise to do a lot of things when our back is up against the wall, don't we? And then when the threat is gone, we tend to go back and start doing the same crap. The second gold nugget really hit me, though. He said, the crazy thing is when we straighten out spiritually, everything else follows. And yet it's the most subtle and the most elusive. And I think a lot of people wrote him off when he went to prison. They didn't think he was going to be able to recover from that, but he certainly proved the naysayers wrong. And I'm sure that therapy and rehab helps him, but what he really zeroed in on was he's quite devoted to a particular martial arts practice. And for a lot of people I know, martial arts is a martial arts discipline is a spiritual practice. And I believe that's what really keeps him not only sober, but I think that's where a lot of his peace and joy come in, the way he was talking about it. And it got me thinking, and if you've been here for a while, you've heard me say that therapy gave me great coping skills. My mentor and studies changed the way I process information. And my spiritual and energetic practices have helped me more embody that knowledge and wisdom. So today I thought I'd share a few things in that space that have helped me. So I started studying shamanism several years ago at this point. First with the South American practice. I found it insightful, but there was something that I just didn't resonate with. And then I found a Celtic shamanism teacher, and that's when everything started clicking. And I took self-study courses, I took a live short program, and actually I am in her Celtic shamanism practitioner training, and I'm about a little over halfway through, and that's with Rhonda McCrimmon at the Center for Shamanism out of Scotland. Now, there's no single agreed upon definition for the word shamanism among anthropologists. And I know that there's a lot of stuff out there about culture appropriation, but the reality is across the world, there have been different types of shamanic practices. And despite popular belief in the U.S., the word shaman isn't a Native American word. There certainly are open practices versus closed practices from different indigenous groups. Now, to my knowledge, I don't engage in any closed practices. For instance, I don't use white sage to smudge. I don't actually smudge. I do use smoke clearing, which you can find smoke clearing all over the world as well. I tend to use like rosemary and mugwort and lavender. And I also sing, which is a Celtic practice. And as I've continued down the path, a lot of things have changed for me over the last several years as my practice has become more Celtic focused. I mean, I don't use chakras, I use the Celtic energy centers. So it's just helped me focus a little bit more in that way. Now, if I had to name 3 major impacts or gifts that this deepening of the spiritual path has given me, I would say that probably number 1 is a stronger sense of clarity about myself and trust within myself. I know who I am, why I'm here, what my purpose is, and I feel like, much like what Robert Downey Jr. said, that once you start straightening out spiritually, or like when you start straightening out spiritually, everything else follows. There are concepts in core shamanism around what they call power loss and soul loss. And I believe that we are seeing a lot of power loss and soul loss in the world right now. There's a epidemic of disconnection. And I felt like once I found a more solid spiritual footing, once I committed to it at a different level, I reclaimed a lot of my power back. As I continue to heal, I reclaim bits of myself that I have left in the past, and I'm still doing that. As I work on this continuously. And 2, I don't chase chaos anymore. I don't feel the need for it. That lifelong cycle of being on a roller coaster from my childhood is not my normal any longer. It's not that it doesn't occasionally show up. I mean, hey, life happens and I'm human. But my nervous system is far more regulated. Probably the most regulated it's ever been. And I'm far less likely to self-sabotage. And 3rd, and probably the most impactful, is I feel much more supportive all of the time, even when I'm alone, even when things are not going great, when there's maybe a struggle comes up. I have this sense of having a very strong spiritual support team. I can call in my guides for guidance. I can call in my guides to help me feel more safe in my body. I can call in my guides to, give me a sense of protection. And through that, I can tap into this sense of interconnectedness to everything, which really helps me stay rooted. Now, I don't think you can talk about shamanism without talking about animism, which is a Latin word, or actually it comes from Latin, anima meaning breath and spirit and life, and it's the belief that objects and places and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. And when I started looking at the world through this lens in this way, I think it really helped me start being more mindful and more present. And it led me to start looking at my value systems, my habits. It's really even affected some of my goals. I mean, I'm on this material plane to have this human experience, but I'm also part of the larger whole. So much of personal and spiritual development today is all about what can you get, what can you manifest, and it's like, what am I contributing back? And so what does this look like in my day-to-day life? Well, yeah, I do some shamanic journeying with a drum on occasion, but a lot of it, most of it, in fact, is just being very intentional about finding the sacred in the mundane stuff. You can put the sacred into just about anything. And actually, sometimes I even do that if I'm procrastinating on some random household task. I'll ask myself, okay, so how can I bring this into a more spiritual space. I talk to my house. I talk to my car. Actually, that's a running joke at my dealership. They notice, like, you're the one that talks to your car, don't you? And I'm like, yes. But I'm usually right about what's going on. I get outside every day. It's rare that I don't have my bare feet on the ground, even in the winter, earthing, listening to the birds. If I need to clear my mind, if I need to get some guidance on something, I may set an intention and take a walk. I think Rhonda calls it as omen walks. See what intuitive hits I get. Sometimes, I'll have something incredibly amusing happen, like, finding a feather or, little gifts will appear. I have conversations with the land I live on. I ask it what it needs. You'd be surprised what comes up out of nowhere in your mind when you do that. I'll pick up trash at a park, recycle, reuse, like I talked about on the episode with Julie Seal. That, you can bring that in as a spirit, like part of your spiritual practice. You're being mindful about the earth, right? Now, how does this tie into the tools that I like to use, like human design and gene keys and the universal law principles? Well, I think knowing what your source code is, your internal architecture plans, that's like your map. And that is my map. And then my spiritual practice just underpins everything. And when I finish my practitioner training next year, I'm sure more of that will be incorporated into my business work. But even now, it's definitely influence changes. I mean, when I prep for client meetings, I have a little ritual that I go into, and I feel like I'm clearer, I'm more present with my clients. So it's, like I said, a lot of it is bringing the sacred into the mundane. So this week, I'd like to ask you to contemplate your own spiritual practice, if you have one. If you don't, what might you think about developing one for yourself? Perhaps it's like Robert Downey Jr. and you're like, hey, maybe I do want to try a martial art. Tai Chi, for instance, that's not the one that he uses. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is that he practices. Damien Eccles, yes, was on death row I think he was on death row for like over 20 years. I don't think he would have been able to survive that had he not been devoted to his ceremonial magician practice that he still has when he was released from prison. He has continued that work and also has written a couple of books about it. Or perhaps like you're like my ex-husband and you pray in the shower every day. Or perhaps I've piqued your interest about shamanism. There's lots of teachers out there. Sandra Ingerman is a rather popular one. Alberto Villoldo. He's from the Four Winds Society. He's another one. Both of them have lots of books on the subject. Of course, I'm partial to my own teacher, Rhonda McCrimmon, and the Center of Shamanism. Rhonda has a great IG presence on Instagram. She does a lot of teaching over there. She also has a great book called The Cauldron and the Drum. So you might want to check those out. As always, thanks for listening. Remember to find beauty every day and seek the magic in the mundane. Thank you for listening to the Source Code Podcast. If you found this episode insightful and feel moved to, please leave a review and share it out with those you believe will find it helpful. You can check out my website for more information at www.adrianmcdonald.com. And for more of my more regular musings, connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and LinkedIn. I hope you have a beautiful week.